They did not scream. They did not beg. When the whole galaxy pushed them out, humanity only smiled, and that smile made the room feel colder than space itself. The Grand Assembly Hall was so quiet that even the soft hum of the floating lights felt loud. Envoy Elias Vance stood at the center of the chamber, facing a wall-sized voting screen. The final result burned across it in cold silver numbers. 842 systems in favor, 15 against, 4 abstained. Earth had been cast out. No more access to galactic trade routes, no more travel through the shared star corridors, no more embassies on alien worlds, no more place in the galaxy's future. At the high platform, Chancellor Tharex, leader of the insect-like Krell Dominion, lifted his sharp head and looked down at Elias with his cluster of bark eyes. "By decision of the Galactic Union," he said, his voice dry and hard, "the species of Earth is hereby removed from interstellar society. All human vessels must return to their home system within 30 days. All routes leading beyond your star will be sealed. All agreements are ended." Around the hall, many alien officials watched closely. Some looked satisfied, some nervous, a few looked ashamed. They expected anger, they expected a threat, they expected humanity to fight. But Elias only lowered his eyes for one brief second, as if taking in the weight of history, and then looked up again with a calm face. "We understand," he said. That was all. A ripple of confusion moved through the chamber. Tharex clicked his mandibles. "You accept the ruling?" Elias gave a small nod. "Earth accepts the Union's choice." Near the back of the human section, his aide, Mira Sloan, clenched her hands so tightly her knuckles turned white. She could barely breathe. They had helped these people. Human engineers repaired their broken gates. Human doctors cured plagues on worlds light years away. Human fleets ended pirate wars no one else could stop. And this was the reward. Elias turned slightly and looked over the gathered delegates. "Thank you," he said, almost gently, "for everything the galaxy has taught us. We have learned a great deal." That made several of the alien delegates shift in their seats, because his voice was respectful, but his smile was not weak. It was the smile of someone who had just confirmed an old suspicion. Far away, on Earth, Prime Minister Alina Ward watched the broadcast from the command room beneath the Capitol. Standing beside her were Fleet Marshal Jonas Hale and physicist Dr. Celine Vale. None of them looked surprised. "So," Alina said quietly, "they finally did it." Jonas folded his arms. "They were always going to. We solved their gravity engine problem in 7 months. It took them 2 centuries. That frightened them." "They do not fear our violence. They fear our speed," Celine said softly. On the screen, Elias began walking away from the platform. No protest, no final speech, just that calm smile. Alina exhaled and turned from the broadcast. "How long until all our people are home?" 22 days, Jonas answered. "Every ship, every outpost, every station crew." Celine's eyes stayed fixed on Elias. "Then we begin." Back in the assembly hall, Mira hurried to catch up with him. "They made a terrible mistake," she whispered. Elias did not slow down. "No," he said, "they made a fearful choice." Mira stared at him. "How can you be this calm?" He finally looked at her, and there was sadness in his eyes, but something else too, something brighter, something dangerous. "Because, Mira," he said, "they just gave us the one thing no empire ever gives willingly." She frowned. "What?" Elias glanced once at the stars beyond the chamber glass. "Freedom." Humanity was going home in silence, but behind that silence, something had already started to move, and when the galaxy finally saw it, fear would no longer be enough.
Freedom. The word stayed in Mira's mind long after they left the assembly hall. She walked beside Elias through the bright outer corridor, where ships from hundreds of worlds floated beyond the glass. The station looked the same as always, clean, calm, proud, but now everything felt different. Every light seemed colder. Every passing alien face seemed distant. At the docking gate, the rest of the human team waited in silence. No one asked questions. They had all seen the vote. They had all heard the order. Go home, stay there, disappear. The shuttle doors opened with a soft hiss. Elias stepped inside first. Mira followed, then the others. The moment the hatch sealed, the room changed. No cameras, no diplomats, no watching eyes. Only humans. For the first time since the vote, Mira let her anger show. "They used us," she said. "They took our help, our science, our ships, and then pushed us out the moment they felt threatened." No one answered right away. The shuttle pulled free from the station and turned toward the human carrier waiting in orbit. Elias stood near the front screen with his hands behind his back. "Yes," he said at last, "that is exactly what they did." Mira blinked. "And that does not make you angry?" He looked at her reflection in the dark glass. "It does." "Then why do you sound so calm?" "Because anger is useful only when it serves a purpose." The pilot, Commander Terran Holt, gave a dry laugh from his seat. "That means he's furious." A few weak smiles appeared, but only for a second. On the screen, the massive station grew smaller behind them. Around it moved fleets from worlds that had just voted Earth out of galactic life. Mira stared at them and felt something hard form in her chest. "What happens now?" she asked. Elias finally turned to face the group. "Now we go home. We bring back every human ship, every worker, every scientist, every child studying on foreign worlds. We close what must be closed. We leave cleanly." "And then?" His eyes narrowed just a little. "Then we stop building for their future." That changed the air in the shuttle. Everyone understood what he meant. For years, Earth had spent its best minds helping fit into the galactic system. Shared standards, shared routes, shared limits. They had tried to belong. That attempt was over. When the shuttle reached the carrier ESS Resolute, a secure channel opened at once from Earth Command. Prime Minister Alina Ward appeared on the bridge screen. Fleet Marshal Jonas Hale stood beside her. Dr. Celine Vale was already studying a stream of incoming reports. "Envoy Vance, welcome back," Alina said. "The vote is done," Elias replied. "We know." Jonas stepped forward. "Recovery operation begins now. All external teams are receiving return orders. Phase 1 is active." Mira looked between them. Phase 1? Celine raised her eyes from the data screen. "We prepared for this outcome a long time ago." Mira felt a chill. "You expected exile?" "No," Alina said carefully. "We expected fear. Exile was only one possible shape of it." Elias nodded once, as if hearing confirmation of something old and certain. "How far along are we?" Jonas answered without hesitation. "Shipyard expansion at Mars is ahead of schedule. Belt factories are ready. The deep projects remain hidden." Mira stared at them. There was already a plan? Celine's voice was calm, but there was quiet emotion under it. "Mira, when a door closes, you can waste years knocking, or you can build your own road." For the first time since the vote, Mira's anger shifted. It did not fade, it sharpened. Behind the pain, behind the insult, behind the silence forced on their species, something else was rising. Not surrender, not revenge, purpose. Outside the ship, the stars stretched endlessly into the dark, and somewhere inside that darkness, humanity had already decided it would not stay small. As Earth called all its people home, secret engines were waking under red dust and black stone, and the galaxy still had no idea what exile had truly set free.
The galaxy still had no idea what exile had truly set free. While the last human convoys rushed home through fading legal routes, Deep under the red plains of Mars, lights burned in places no alien map had ever marked. Dr. Celine Vale walked through one of those hidden corridors with fast, steady steps. The underground complex stretched for miles beneath the planet's surface, carved into stone and shielded from every known scanner. Doors sealed behind her one after another. Security fields shimmered and vanished. Engineers in dark uniforms moved through blast labs carrying tablets, tools, and dreams too dangerous to show the wider galaxy. At the final chamber, a wide door opened. Inside, a ring of silver metal floated above the floor. It was enormous, 3 stories high, smooth as liquid, glowing faintly from lines cut into its inner edge. Around it stood dozens of technicians and physicists, all silent, all waiting. Celine stopped at the threshold. For a moment, even she forgot to breathe. Project Starfold was no longer theory. Chief Engineer Darian Pross turned at the sound of the door. His face looked tired, unshaven, and more alive than she had seen in months. "You came at the right time," he said. Celine stepped closer, her voice low. "Tell me it works." Darian gave a crooked smile. "I can tell you it almost works, which for something the Union claimed was impossible is already a beautiful insult." A few nearby scientists laughed under their breath. At the center console, a young technician raised a hand. "Power levels stable." Darian nodded and gestured toward the ring. "Standard jump gates use fixed corridors. They travel where the galaxy already knows how to go. This," he tapped the glass screen before him, "doesn't ask permission from mapped space. It bends distance directly." Celine studied the glowing ring. No lane network, no relay dependence, no shared control. No gate taxes, no route blockades, no foreign keys to shut us out, Darian said. "If we finish this, we will never be trapped behind someone else's walls again." The room fell quiet. That was the heart of it. Not just travel, freedom. A drone was rolled forward on a magnetic platform. It was small, black, and shaped like a sharp wedge, barely bigger than a suitcase. Celine folded her arms. "Range target?" "Outer system marker near Neptune," Darian said. "If the fold holds, it should cross the distance in less than 4 seconds." Celine looked at him. "And if it fails?" He did not smile this time. "Then it will stop existing in any meaningful way." Comforting. "I try." The countdown began. 3, 2, 1. The ring flashed. Space inside it twisted like water hit by invisible wind. Not light, not fire, something stranger. The air pulled inward. Several screens flickered. The drone launched forward and vanished without sound. For one impossible second, nothing happened. Then a signal appeared on the far monitor. The room froze. A technician checked the readings twice, then 3 times. "Marker confirms arrival," she whispered. Her voice cracked. The drone made it, full structure intact. No one moved. Then the whole chamber erupted. Shouts, laughter, tears, people grabbing each other's shoulders. Months of pressure burst out in one wave of stunned joy. Celine closed her eyes for just a second. The emotion hit her harder than she expected. Not because of the machine, not because of the numbers, because the stars had just changed. Darian leaned against the console, breathing hard. 4 seconds, he said. Neptune in 4 seconds. Celine looked at the ring again, and now it did not seem like a machine. It looked like a door someone had tried to brick shut, and humanity had just built a better one. Her wrist communicator vibrated, priority signal. She stepped aside and accepted the call. Prime Minister Alina Ward appeared at once. "Well?" Alina asked. Celine did not hide her smile. "We did it," she said. "The old roads are finished." On the other end, Alina was silent for one long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. Then begin scaling immediately, quietly. Celine understood. The work would stay hidden. The galaxy would keep watching Earth, expecting retreat, weakness, dependence. They would see shipyards, yes, factories, yes, defensive growth, perhaps, but they would not see this. They would not see humanity learning how to step outside every chain placed around them. Back in the chamber, the celebration was already turning into planning. More tests, larger masses, living cargo one day, then ships. Celine ended the call and rejoined the team. Darian looked at her with bright, tired eyes. This is only the first breakthrough. I know. He hesitated. Sometimes I wonder if they would have let us build this if they had not exiled us. Celine's face changed. Some small sadness passed through it. No, she said. They would have slowed it, reviewed it, feared it, regulated it, and buried it. Darian glanced at the glowing ring. Their mistake, then. Celine looked at the folded space inside the metal circle. Their biggest one yet. The first impossible engine had awakened on Mars, but in the asteroid belt, humanity was already building something even more dangerous. Not a weapon, but a future too large to stop. The first impossible engine had awakened on Mars, but in the asteroid belt, humanity was already building something even more dangerous. Not a weapon, but a future too large to stop. Far beyond Earth and Mars, where the sunlight was weaker and the rocks drifted in endless black silence, the old mining colonies had changed. They no longer looked like rough industrial stations built to cut ore from lifeless stone. Now they looked like the bones of giants. Commander Rhea Dalton stood inside the observation tower of Belt Foundry 9, staring through layered glass at a construction frame so vast it almost hurt to understand. Hundreds of work drones moved around it like sparks around a fire. Supply barges floated in perfect lines. Welding beams flashed across black metal. Sections the size of cities slowly turned in vacuum. It was not a station, it was a ship. No, Rhea corrected herself. It was a world wrapped in armor. Colonial Director Malik Soren stepped beside her and handed over a datapad. The latest numbers. She read quickly. Hull structure at 41%, internal ecosystems at 22%, core manufacturing spine ahead of schedule, materials intake rising faster than expected. Rhea lowered the pad. You were right. Malik allowed himself a tired smile. I prefer hearing that before disaster, but I'll take it. Outside, the unfinished vessel hung like a promise. The official file named it Ark Vessel 1. Among the workers, it had another name, Haven. Each Ark was designed to carry millions of people for decades if needed. It would have forests, water reserves, food towers, medical cities, schools, fabrication plants, research decks, and enough industry to build smaller ships from local resources. It was not a carrier, it was not a transport, it was civilization that could move. That was what made it dangerous. Not because it could destroy worlds, because it could ignore them. A species with enough arcs would never again be trapped on one planet or one system or behind one political wall. Push them out in one place and they would bloom somewhere else. Malik leaned against the railing. The Union thought exile would force us inward. Rhea kept watching the great unfinished shape beyond the glass. Instead, it forced us to think bigger. A signal chimed from the tower console. Incoming relay from Earth Command, priority. Malik activated it. Prime Minister Alina Ward appeared above the table in a pale blue projection. Fleet Marshal Jonas Hale stood beside her, as stern as ever. Report, Alina said. Rhea straightened. Ark construction is stable. Foundries 3 through 12 are fully committed. We can complete the first operational vessel within 18 months. Jonas shook his head once. Too slow. Rhea did not react. With respect, Marshal, this is the fastest heavy civil construction in human history. Then make history move faster, he said. Malik stepped in before the tension could rise. Resource flow is the limit. The belt can support current output, but to double speed, we'll need broader strip authorization and deeper automation. Alina looked toward Selene Vale, who now appeared in a smaller side projection, joining from Mars. Can Starfold support supply jumps yet? Not at arc scale, but soon. For now, local throughput remains critical. Alina's face hardened, not with anger, but with resolve. Then local throughput becomes sacred. We do not waste time. We do not waste metal. We do not waste this chance. Rhea felt the force of those words in her chest. This was bigger than recovery, bigger than pride. Humanity was rebuilding its entire future in secret, and every hour mattered. The call ended. The room went quiet again, except for the low hum of systems. Malik exhaled. She sounds more certain every time. She knows what's coming, Rhea said. He turned to her. Do you? Rhea was silent for a moment. Below them, workers moved through the spine of Haven. Some were welders, some were biologists shaping future farmland. Some were teachers already planning school blocks for children who had not even been born yet. I know this, she said at last. No one builds ships like this if they plan only to survive. Malik followed her gaze. No, they build them if they plan to spread. A soft alert lit up on her wrist. New return logs. Another wave of human vessels had crossed back into the home system. Cargo crews, researchers, families, pilots, thousands more souls returning by the hour. Everyone was coming home. Not to hide, to gather, to prepare. Down in Dock Section C, a group of children from one of the old mining families stood behind a safety barrier, pointing at the Ark skeleton outside. Rhea watched one little girl press both hands to the glass and smile as if she were looking at a sunrise. The child did not see steel beams. She saw a path. That shook Rhea more than any speech, because children often understood truth faster than adults. The galaxy shut one door. Humanity had answered by building doors that could carry whole populations through the dark. Malik checked another report. We've had requests from the outer stations. They want places reserved on future arcs. For relocation? For destiny, he said quietly. Rhea looked back at Haven. For the first time, she could almost imagine it finished, lights glowing in its inner parks, engines humming, millions of sleeping dreams carried between stars. And she realized something that made her skin rise. The Union still thought humanity was being contained, but no one had ever contained a fire by giving it more fuel. While the first arc grew in the belt, hidden eyes beyond the home system were already watching, and on Earth, a single speech was about to tell 42 billion humans that exile was not the end of their story. On Earth, a single speech was about to tell 42 billion humans that exile was not the end of their story. The message went live across every screen in the home system. From the crowded towers of Earth to the underground cities of Mars, from the rotating habitats above Luna to the hard-worked stations in the belt, people stopped what they were doing and looked up. Factories slowed, schoolrooms fell silent, even ship crews drifting between worlds paused to watch. Prime Minister Alina Ward stood alone at the center of the broadcast chamber. No flags, no grand stage, no display of power behind her. Only a dark window, and beyond it the blue curve of Earth hanging in shadow and light. For a long moment she said nothing. When she finally spoke, her voice was calm, but it carried the weight of a species holding its breath. "My fellow humans," she began, "today the galaxy told us we do not belong among them." In homes and stations and control rooms, people listened without moving. "They shut their gates," she continued. "They ended our treaties. They cut our roads. They looked at our hunger to learn, our speed to adapt, our refusal to stay small, and they called it dangerous." In a workshop above Mars, a mechanic lowered his welding torch. In a hospital orbiting Saturn, a nurse stopped beside a patient's bed. In an old apartment in Nairobi, an elderly woman who had watched humanity's first alien contact decades earlier sat with wet eyes and straightened her back. Alina's face remained steady, but emotion moved under every word. They expected fear, she said. Some of them expected anger. A few may have hoped for collapse. They thought exile would make us weaker, smaller, easier to forget. She let the silence after that line settle. Then she leaned slightly forward, and her voice changed. We were wrong. It was not shouted. That made it stronger. Across the home system, shoulders lifted, hearts tightened. We are not a species that ends when a door closes, Alina said. We are the species that builds another door, and if none exists, we make one. In the orbital defense ring above Earth, young cadet Lena Marr felt the words hit her like an electric wave. Around her, hardened officers stood in full uniform, staring at the screen with shining eyes they would never admit to. We crossed oceans, Alina said. We climbed out of caves, crossed deserts, split the atom, walked on dead worlds, and reached into the dark before anyone invited us to. Every step of our history began with someone saying it could not be done. Now emotion sharpened her tone. We were not welcomed into the stars because we were harmless. We were welcomed because we were useful. And we were cast out not because we failed, but because we frightened those who had forgotten how to change. That line spread like fire through human hearts, not because it was comforting, because it felt true. In the asteroid belt, Commander Rhea Dalton stood with workers gathered across the main assembly deck of Foundry 9. Grease-stained engineers, miners, cooks, welders, navigators, people who had built hard lives in hard places, stood frozen under the pale light of the giant screen. Alina looked directly into the camera. So hear me clearly, she said. This is not the end of human history. This is the end of human hesitation. No one spoke. No one needed to. For too long, we tried to fit ourselves into a system built by older hands and slower minds. We accepted limits we did not create. We followed roads we did not own. We shaped our future around the comfort of others. Her next breath was slow. No more. The words were simple. That made them unforgettable. We are going home, she said, but not to hide. We are going home to gather our strength, to build without permission, to dream without apology, to become what we were always meant to be. In a classroom under the Pacific Dome City, children stared in complete silence. One boy reached for his teacher's hand without looking away from the screen. Alina's eyes glistened now, though her voice never broke. The galaxy believes it has pushed us back into a corner, but humanity has never feared the corner. We have always used it to plant our feet. A quiet laugh broke from some viewers through tears. Then came the line that would be repeated for years. Let them keep their table, she said. Humanity will build its own. Across Earth, across Mars, across the belt and the moons and stations of the home system, 42 billion people rose into thunder. In homes they stood, in ships they shouted, in factories they pounded fists against railings. In military barracks, disciplined crews broke formation and cheered anyway. Lena Marr found herself crying before she realized it. Beside her, a veteran commander whispered almost to himself, "Now it begins." On screen, Alina's expression softened one final time. We will remember who stood with us. We will remember who turned away. But we will not live in bitterness. We will live in purpose. One day, humanity will return to the wider galaxy, not as guests asking to be let in, but as equals who built their own path to the stars. The broadcast ended, but the silence afterward did not last. It became something louder, something deeper, not noise, momentum. That same hour, deep beyond the edge of legal traffic, silent Union probes watched the human system from a distance. They recorded the speech. They recorded the cheering cities, the rising industrial output, the fleet traffic surging between worlds. And light years away, in the chambers of the Krell Dominion, Chancellor Tharix watched the reports arrive one by one. His many eyes narrowed. "They are building too much," he said. An aide shifted uneasily. "Perhaps they are only reacting emotionally, Chancellor, preparing to survive in isolation." Tharix stared at the frozen image of Alina Ward on his screen. "No," he said quietly, "that was not the face of a defeated leader." He leaned closer. "That was the face of someone who has been released." While the galaxy watched humanity gather itself in silence, the first new warship was already taking shape near Luna, and it was being built for a future no alien power had imagined.
Near Luna, the first new warship was already taking shape, and it was being built for a future no alien power had imagined. The shipyard floated in the black like a crown of iron around the moon. From Earth, it looked almost delicate, just a thin silver ring catching sunlight above the gray horizon. But inside the yard, nothing felt delicate. Everything shook with force, heat, motion, and pressure. Welding arcs flashed brighter than lightning. Heavy lifters dragged armored hull sections into place. Construction drones swarmed over the frame of the vessel like metal insects building a god. Captain Nadia Mercer stood on the main observation gantry and watched the unfinished ship turn slowly beneath her. It was longer than any human military vessel ever built. Its armored spine ran like a blade through the dock. Engine chambers large enough to swallow old cruisers sat open along the rear frame. Weapon housings were still empty, but even unfinished, the ship carried a presence that pressed into the chest. Beside her, Chief Shipwright Orrin Beck held a slate full of structural data. "She's ahead of schedule," he said. Nadia did not look away from the vessel. "You say that like you're surprised." "I am," Orrin admitted. "Half the systems inside her still sound like science fiction when I read the specs." Nadia finally glanced at him. "And yet you're building them." He gave a short, tired smile. "That's the worrying part." The vessel's official designation was VX-01. The workers already had another name for her, Resolute Dawn. Unlike the arcs in the belt, this ship was not meant to carry civilization. It was meant to protect it. That difference mattered. Humanity's leaders kept saying they were not preparing for war, and Nadia believed them, but she also knew history too well to trust hope alone. The galaxy had cast Earth out once. If humanity returned stronger, richer, and impossible to control, some powers would not accept that peacefully. So, the shipyards around Luna were building answers, not fleets for conquest, shields with engines. "Bridge module locking in now," a controller announced over comms. Below, a massive section drifted forward under tractor guidance. The command core slid into the open frame and sealed with a deep metallic shudder that Nadia felt through the soles of her boots. Orrin checked his slate again. "Once the spine stabilizes, we can begin installing the adaptive armor lattice." "Has Vale's team signed off on full integration?" "They sent approval 2 hours ago. Mars says the material is ready." Nadia nodded slowly. Adaptive armor, fold drive prototypes, long-range phase masking, reactor density so extreme it made old Union battleships look like museum pieces. Humanity was building with a speed that would have terrified the galaxy even if Earth had still been welcome. Built in exile, the work felt even more dangerous. Her wrist unit pulsed. Incoming command briefing. A secure hollow rose between them. Prime Minister Alina Ward appeared first, then Fleet Marshal Jonas Hale. Dr. Celine Vale joined a second later from Mars, pale with exhaustion and bright with focus. "Nadia, status," Jonas said. "Primary hull completion in 11 days. Weapons integration after that. Full systems test inside 6 weeks if supply remains stable. Jonas grunted approval. It will remain stable. Celine spoke next. You'll receive the first scaled naval fold core within 72 hours. This one is still experimental. Do not let your engineers improvise around it. Oren muttered under his breath. That instruction alone guarantees improvisation. Nadia ignored him. Understood. Alina's expression remained calm, but there was gravity behind it. This ship matters, she said, not because we seek a fight, because every colony project, every ark, every hidden station under construction will one day depend on the belief that humanity can defend what it builds. Nadia answered without hesitation, we will not fail. The hollow vanished. For a few seconds, only the shipyard noise remained. Then Oren let out a breath. No pressure. Nadia turned back toward the unfinished warship. Pressure was everywhere now. In the yards, in the belt, on Mars, on Earth, in every hidden project, in every returning convoy. Humanity had been forced inward, and instead of breaking, it had started compressing into something harder. Far below the gantry, crews moved through the inner hull carrying cable trunks and reactor seals. Many had families on Earth, some had children on Mars. A few had spent years in Union space before being called home. They all worked with the same look in their eyes now. Not panic, not rage, commitment. Nadia knew that look. It was the look people wore when they understood they were helping build a line no enemy would be allowed to cross. She took a lift down to the central dock level. The closer she came, the larger the vessel felt. On the hull, workers in magnetic harnesses looked like specks. She placed one gloved hand against the cold metal plating. Soon, this ship would move. Soon, it would leave lunar orbit and test engines the galaxy believed impossible. And when it did, it would not be alone for long. Captain, Oren's voice came over comms, you should see traffic control. She pulled up the shared feed. A line of cargo ships had just entered dock range from the belt and Mars. Their holds were packed with reactor components, armor mesh, precision cores, fabrication swarms, and enough classified hardware to change the meaning of fleet warfare. Nadia watched the stream of arrivals and felt the future narrowing into shape. One warship, then another, then enough to stand between human dreams and anyone who wished to burn them down. Above the far curve of the moon, Earth shone blue and bright, beautiful and distant. Home, origin, memory, but not limit. Nadia looked back at resolute dawn and felt something rise in her chest that was stronger than pride. Certainty. The galaxy thought humanity had been sent back to its cradle. What it had really done was give them time to arm the road out. As Luna forged the first guardianship, something stranger was happening on Earth itself. Old borders were fading, and for the first time in generations, humanity was beginning to think of itself as one people.
For the first time in generations, humanity was beginning to think of itself as one people. It did not happen with a law. It did not happen with a flag, and it did not happen because old arguments suddenly became unimportant. It happened because the stars had made the choice brutally simple. The galaxy had not rejected one nation. It had not rejected one language, one culture, or one government. It had rejected all of them together. And in that wound, something unexpected began to grow. Professor Ilian Torres stood in a circular briefing hall in Geneva, facing a room filled with leaders, analysts, and planners from every major region of Earth. The session was being sent live to policy centers on Mars, Luna, and the Belt. On the wall behind him, a data model turned slowly in soft blue light. It showed humanity before the exile, hundreds of political blocs, thousands of trade disputes, resource rivalries, border conflicts, legal walls, cultural separation, entire systems of distrust inherited from centuries of history. Then the model shifted. Post-exile data appeared. The change was shocking. Cross-regional research sharing had tripled. Military and civil supply systems now overlapped with almost no resistance. Water, food, and medicine transfers moved faster than ever before. Energy distribution had become more efficient. Independent governments still existed, but more and more decisions were being made through shared councils, not competitive bargaining. Ilian touched the screen and looked out at the silent room. The exile did what diplomacy could not, he said. It forced the species to see itself from the outside. A minister from the Pacific Union frowned slightly. That sounds poetic. I assume the reality is less elegant. A few people smiled. Ilian nodded. Much less elegant. We still argue. We still distrust. We still protect old power. But something changed at the emotional level. For the first time in recorded history, billions of people stopped asking, "What am I compared to other humans?" and started asking, "What are we compared to the universe?" That landed hard, because everyone in the room had felt it, not as theory, as pressure, as grief, as pride. At the back of the chamber, Prime Minister Alina Ward stood quietly beside advisors from Mars and Luna. She had not come to speak, she came to listen. Ilian enlarged another set of figures. Birth rates were rising. Volunteer applications for education, engineering, medicine, and off-world service had surged. Cultural exchange between Earth and the colonies had deepened. School systems were rewriting their foundations. Children were being taught planetary history, yes, but also species history. Not one country's story, humanity's story. The exile did not create unity, Ilian said. It revealed the cost of failing to reach it. In Mars, in a school beneath the Valles Marineris habitat dome, 13-year-old Kira Sol sat with her class watching the same briefing. Her teacher had paused the lesson 3 times already because students kept raising their hands. "Why did they fear us so much?" one boy asked. "Because we moved too fast?" another guessed. Kira kept staring at the screen. She had never visited Earth. She was born under Martian stone, raised among engineers, dust filters, and pressure gates. Yet when the Union cast humanity out, she had cried for a planet she had never touched. That still confused her. At last, she raised her own hand. "Maybe they feared us because we don't stay in the shape people expect." The class went quiet. Her teacher looked at her for a long second and said softly, "Yes, I think that may be part of it." On Earth, the political changes were becoming visible even in ordinary life. Old customs remained, local pride remained, cultures remained rich and different, but the emotional distance between them had begun to thin. A drought in one region no longer felt like someone else's problem. A breakthrough in one lab was shared faster. A launch from Mars was cheered on Earth. Mining deaths in the belt were mourned everywhere. Pain, too, had become shared. That was new. In Nairobi, shopkeeper Amina Kibet closed her store early to attend a neighborhood gathering. It was one of thousands happening across Earth that week. No orders had been given for them. People were organizing them on their own. Public meetings, food exchanges, memorial walls, planning circles, small celebrations of survival. Amina stood in a crowded square lit with hanging lamps and listened as a former dock worker spoke into a cheap local mic. "They thought sending us back would shrink us," he said, "but look around, we're finally seeing each other clearly." People clapped, some cried, some laughed through it. Children ran between tables as older men and women argued over solar permits, school expansion, and whether their grandchildren should aim for Mars, Luna, or the Belt. Life was still life, messy, human, but it was turning towards something larger than itself. That same night, Alina met with her inner circle in a quiet chamber below the Capitol. Jonas Hale was there, as always severe. Celine Vale looked even more exhausted than usual. Professor Ilian Torres had been invited to present privately after the policy session. Jonas folded his hands behind his back. Shared identity is useful. Useful does not mean stable. It's stabilizing faster than expected, Ilian replied. People respond to common external pressure with stronger in-group loyalty. In simple language, the galaxy made humanity feel like one family. Jonas did not smile. Families fight. Yes, Ilian said, but they also defend each other. That made the room still. Alina looked toward the dark window at the end of the chamber. Beyond it, the night sky was clear. "We'll need that," she said. Celine leaned forward over the table. "The science programs are accelerating because of it. Labs that used to compete are now sharing full data streams. Engineers from 6 major blocks are working on one common reactor architecture. We are moving faster because people finally believe the future belongs to all of them." Jonas gave one slow nod. "Then we make sure that belief survives first contact with harder truths." He meant sacrifice, delays, hard choices, hidden programs, the burden of building for decades without public comfort. But Alina understood something else too. A united species could dream bigger than a divided one. And dreams, once shared by enough people, became infrastructure. She rose from her seat and walked to the window. Below, the lights of the city spread into the dark like a second sky. Above, the real sky waited, silent, wounded, and full of doors humanity no longer intended to ask permission to open. Behind her, the room continued discussing logistics, population flow, education redesign, interplanetary civic systems, long-term cultural planning. All the quiet, difficult work that turned emotion into structure. Alina listened, then closed her eyes for just one moment. The exile had hurt them, deeply. But pain did what comfort never did. It stripped away illusion. It made the species look at itself and ask the oldest, hardest question in a new way. If no one else will claim us, will we finally claim each other? And for the first time, humanity's answer was beginning to sound like yes. As unity spread across Earth, Mars, and the Belt, a colder breakthrough was waiting beneath the ice of Europa, one that could make human ships invisible, untouchable, and terrifyingly free. Beneath the ice of Europa, a colder breakthrough was waiting, one that could make human ships invisible, untouchable, and terrifyingly free. The research station sat under kilometers of frozen crust, buried in blue-white darkness where no sunlight reached. Above it, Jupiter's radiation storms raged across space like silent war drums. Below, in sealed chambers cut into ancient ice and rock, human scientists worked in a kind of stillness that felt almost sacred. Dr. Anika Rowe stood in Test Vault 3, staring at the empty space between 2 black pylons. At first glance, there was nothing there. No glow, no machine, no field visible to the eye. But every sensor in the room said otherwise. The air between the pylons was bending, not moving, not heating, bending. Senior systems physicist Micah Voss moved to the main console and brought up a layered display of shifting numbers. "Field stability is holding," he said, "for 71 seconds now." Anika did not answer right away. Her eyes stayed fixed on the space between the pylons. Inside that invisible zone, reality itself had stopped behaving properly. "Bring in the drone," she said. A hatch opened at the far end of the chamber. A small test probe slid forward on a magnetic rail. It was smooth, round, and no larger than a backpack. Its shell was packed with sensors, cameras, and dense recording nodes. If the experiment failed, they wanted every possible detail before the machine was torn apart. Micah glanced at her. "Last chance to sound worried?" I am worried. You hide it well. I had good teachers. The drone reached the starting mark. Around the chamber, technicians quieted. Even the background noise seemed to thin out. Europa projects always felt different from Mars or Luna. The work here was stranger, less mechanical, less solid. On Mars, they bent distance. At Luna, they forged force. But here, under the ice, they were learning how to step partly outside the ordinary rules of existence. Anika pressed a finger to the activation panel. Begin transit. The drone moved. The moment it crossed between the pylons, it changed. Not in shape, in presence. Its edges blurred, its surface turned uncertain, as if it could not decide whether it really was there. Half the room gasped before anyone could stop themselves. One technician muttered a prayer in a language Anika did not know. Telemetry? She snapped. Micah's fingers flew over the console. Still receiving. Signal is weak. No, not weak, displaced. The probe is reading as if it's in multiple positions at once. Anika stepped closer to the glass wall of the test bay. The drone drifted deeper into the field. Cameras showed it clearly from one angle, faintly from another, and not at all from a third. A defense analyst standing in the back whispered, "My God." No one corrected him. Micah swallowed. External scan systems can't lock on. Thermal signature is breaking apart. Mass profile is unstable. Can it still interact with normal space? Anika asked. A robotic arm extended toward the field, holding a simple metal cube. The half-shifted drone turned, adjusted course, and tapped the cube lightly. The cube moved. Anika felt a chill sweep down her spine. Still there, still able to act, but almost impossible to detect. "Pull it out," she said. The drone exited the field and became solid at once. Sensors screamed with returning data. The machine drifted to a stop, unharmed. For 3 long seconds, nobody spoke. Then the room exploded into motion. Technicians shouted readings to each other. Analysts demanded copies. Someone laughed too loudly from pure relief. Another person sat down on the floor because their legs had given out. Micah turned to Anika, pale and wide-eyed. "We did it." She stared at the probe as if it were a message from the future. "No," she said quietly. "We opened the door. Doing it means surviving what comes next." He understood at once. The first success was never the end of the problem. It was the beginning of scale. Minutes later, a secured priority channel opened from Earth. Prime Minister Alina Ward joined first. Jonas Hale appeared beside her. Celine Vale entered a breath later from Mars, looking as if she had not slept in days. Anika delivered the report herself. Phase state transition held for 71 seconds. Mobile object retained limited interaction with normal space. Standard scan lock failed across thermal, visual, and gravimetric systems. Jonas's expression did not change, but his voice dropped lower. "In plain language." Anika looked directly into the projection. In practice, a ship using this correctly could move through monitored space almost unseen. Silence. Then Celine let out a long breath she clearly had been holding. "Can it be weaponized?" Anika said, "It can be hidden. That is not the same thing." Jonas answered before anyone else could. "In practice, it often becomes the same thing." Alina raised a hand lightly, stopping the turn in tone before it hardened. "How long before field duration is viable for vessel-scale testing?" Micah answered now. "Best case, 18 months for a small craft, longer for something military grade." Jonas nodded once. "Accelerate." Anika frowned. "Too fast and we kill people." Jonas met Anika's eyes through the projection. "Too slow and we leave them exposed." The silence that followed was cold, not hostile, honest. That was the burden of the new age. Every breakthrough carried wonder in one hand and danger in the other. Alina spoke more softly. No shortcuts that risk catastrophic failure, but no wasted motion either. We need this. The channel closed. Micah rubbed both hands over his face. I miss the days when science just made everyone happy. Anika looked back into the test bay. Workers were already resetting the system for another run. Science never only made people happy, it made them powerful. That is why people fear it. He followed her gaze. Do you think the Union feared us because of things like this? No, she said after a moment. I think they feared us because we would keep going after things like this. That was the truth of humanity, and everyone in the vault knew it. A safer species might have seen the strange, half-present drone and stepped back for a century, held hearings, built restrictions, wrapped the unknown in caution until the edge of discovery dulled. Humans did not work that way. They looked into the impossible, felt fear, and then asked how soon it could fly. Later, alone for a moment in the observation corridor, Anika watched Europa's frozen ceiling glow faintly with buried station light. Somewhere above all that ice was the wide black of space. Somewhere beyond that waited alien borders, old power, and a galaxy still convinced Earth had been pushed into isolation. She almost smiled. Isolation? No. Humanity was becoming something far more difficult to control. Not louder, not angrier, less visible. The kind of force that moved in silence until the universe woke up one day and discovered the shape of power had changed while nobody was looking.
Earth's leaders were preparing for the next step, and it would not be survival, retreat, or revenge, but expansion. The room where they made that choice was small by design. No grand chamber, no audience, no symbols of power hung on the walls. Just a long black table, a ring of quiet screens, and a star map stretched across the air above them like a waiting question. Prime Minister Alina Ward stood at the edge of that map with one hand resting on the table. Around her sat Fleet Marshal Jonas Hale, Dr. Celine Vale, Colonial Director Malik Soren, Professor Ilian Torres, and a handful of others trusted with the future no one outside the room could yet fully see. The holographic galaxy turned slowly. Bright lines marked Union space, dense and old, ordered and known. Beyond those lines were the regions most council species ignored: thin stars, dust-veiled sectors, poor systems, hard systems, distant systems, places dismissed as inefficient, too remote, too costly, too empty. Human eyes saw something else: opportunity. Celine stepped forward first. She touched the map, and several dim clusters lit up in pale gold. These zones are beyond the major route lattice, she said. The Union avoids them because standard travel makes them inefficient, but with fold transit, that disadvantage disappears. Malik added another layer: resource surveys, atmosphere estimates, orbital stability markers. A web of hidden possibility appeared across the dark. Several of these clusters can support self-growing colony chains, he said. Not just one settlement, entire human ecosystems. Jonas folded his arms. How fast? Malik answered without hesitation. Fast enough to matter, slow enough to hide if we begin carefully. That last part settled heavily over the room, because secrecy was no longer just a precaution. It was strategy. Ilian looked at the highlighted stars with a strange expression. If we do this, it changes more than geography. A species thinks differently once it stops living around a single center. We already crossed that line, Jonas said. Earth is the origin, not the limit. Alina said nothing at first. She studied the star map in silence, and the room let her. Everyone there understood the weight of this moment. Once the order was given, humanity would not simply be rebuilding at home. It would be planting itself beyond the reach of the cage built around it. Not striking back,
growing past the strike. Selene enlarged one of the outer clusters. 63 stars, hidden partly behind natural dust bands, difficult to scan from range. "This one is ideal for the first long-term expansion zone," she said. "Stable systems, good mineral depth, several worlds that can be reshaped quickly, natural cover from deep-range observation." Jonas glanced toward Alina. "And if they find one colony?" "Then they find one colony," Malik said, "not the network." He pulled up a second layer, more clusters, wide distances between them, no neat line of growth, no obvious pattern. "Distributed expansion," he said, "not a wave, seeds, far apart, self-sufficient. If one fails, the others keep growing." Jonas gave a slow nod. He respected plans that assumed pain and survived it. Professor Torres looked uneasy now. "We are talking about scattering the species." "No," Alina said at last. Her voice was quiet, but everyone turned toward her. "We are talking about ensuring the species can never again be cornered." The room became still. That was the true shape of the decision. Not ambition for its own sake. Insurance against extinction by permission. Alina moved around the table and stood beneath the hovering map. The stars lit her face in shifting blue-white patterns. "The Union believes it has contained us," she said. "They believe distance, route control, and political exclusion have limited what we can become. They are wrong, but their mistake means little if we spend the next 20 years proving them wrong inside a single system." Jonas's expression sharpened with approval. She looked at each person in turn. "We do not return to them. We move beyond them." Selene's eyes brightened. Malik sat straighter. Even Ilyan, still worried, seemed caught by the force of it. "No declarations, no dramatic launch, no signal to the wider galaxy. We begin quietly. Survey teams first, then anchor stations, then industrial footholds, then civilian transfer under layered security. Each site grows its own spine before the next stage begins." Jonas finally spoke. "And protection?" "You will have it," Alina said. "Luna's defense projects are moving ahead. Europa's systems will mature. Mars will keep the fold line open. Nothing we build out there goes undefended." Malik inhaled slowly. "Then this is it." Yes, this was it. The moment Exile stopped being something done to them and became the force that launched them outward. She touched the star cluster Selene had marked first. "Begin with this one." The system acknowledged the selection. The cluster glowed brighter than the rest. Selene smiled, not with relief, but with the fierce emotion of someone watching theory become history. "We'll need a survey commander," she said. Jonas answered at once. "I already have a name." Hours later, in the command deck of the survey vessel ESS Wayfarer, Commander Erin Cade stood over a sealed mission file. He had served 14 years in deep-range exploration before the Exile. He knew how to read silence, how to trust instruments, how to keep crews steady when stars felt too far apart. He broke the seal and read, "Long-range independent deployment. Unmapped outer cluster. Full discretion. No contact with Union traffic. Mission priority. Establish humanity's first hidden path outward." Erin read the final line twice. "You are not searching for a place to survive. You are searching for the place where the future begins." He looked up from the file and out through the forward glass. Earth hung far behind him, blue and burning with memory. Ahead was darkness unclaimed by any law he recognized. He understood the mission, not just the task, the meaning. Every human convoy returning home, every speech, every factory, every buried lab and hidden shipyard, all of it had led here. A choice, to stay where they had been pushed, or to step where no one expected them. He keyed ship-wide command. "All stations, prepare for departure." Around him, systems woke up one by one. Engines hummed low. Navigation surfaces came alive.
Crew members moved with that same quiet intensity he had seen spreading across all of humanity lately. The look of people who knew they were helping build something larger than themselves. Aaron placed his hand on the console. No banners, no applause, no witness but his crew and the stars. That felt right. The greatest turn in human history would not begin with noise. It would begin with motion. The wayfarers slipped from dock in silence and turned toward the dark cluster hidden beyond the old reach of alien maps. Behind it, the home system kept building. Ahead of it, the future waited unclaimed. And somewhere far away, the galaxy still believed humanity had gone home to stay. As the first survey ship crossed into the unknown, the secret shipyards and colonies behind it kept growing. And 5 years later, the first results would be so vast that even Earth would struggle to believe what Exile had created.
5 years later, the first results were so vast that even Earth struggled to believe what Exile had created. The report arrived without ceremony. No public announcement, no celebration broadcast, just a secured signal moving through channels so deeply protected that only a handful of people on Earth, Mars, Luna, and the Belt ever saw it in full. Prime Minister Alina Ward opened the file in the same private strategy room where the first expansion order had been given. For a moment, she simply stared. Then she leaned back slowly and let out a breath that sounded almost like disbelief. Across the table, Jonas Hale watched her face. How large? Alina turned the display so the others could see. A cluster map unfolded across the air. The first expansion zone, once just a quiet mark beyond the reach of Union routes, now burned with human presence. Orbital stations, industrial rings, atmospheric processors, surface cities, agricultural domes, resource hubs, defense grids hidden under civilian architecture, transit nodes ready for larger fold gates. And at the heart of it all, on the third world of a yellow-white star, was humanity's first true outer colony, New Carina. Celine Vale stepped closer to the map, eyes moving over the data. Population? Malik Soren answered from his own screen, voice tight with awe. 17 million permanent settlers, another 6 million in rotating industrial and construction support. Growth rate exceeds every projection. Jonas's jaw shifted once. That was his version of amazement. Alina enlarged the image of New Carina itself. The first landing zone was gone. In its place stood cities shaped in bright arcs around rivers and rising green belts. Sky elevators climbed into orbit. Shipyards floated above the planet like silver scars. Weather systems had already been partially stabilized. The first generation born under that alien sun was now old enough to begin school. Human children, not on Earth, not on Mars, not under borrowed permission, on a world the galaxy did not know existed. Professor Ilian Torres spoke softly, almost to himself. A culture is already forming there. Malik nodded, and not just there. He shifted the map again. More stars lit up. The second cluster, then the third, then the fourth. Survey sites had become footholds. Footholds had become settlements. Settlements had become linked growth zones, each one feeding the next with materials, talent, software, design, and resolve. A web, not centralized, alive. They've started building their own support chain, Malik said. Machine foundries, education blocks, biosphere labs, local fleet fabrication. Earth is still the anchor, but not the crutch. Celine smiled faintly. Good. That mattered more than any of them said aloud. Earth had always been home. It would remain sacred in memory, law, and identity. But if humanity wanted to endure, home could not remain singular. A species living through one birthplace was still fragile. A species living through many worlds became something harder to erase. Jonas looked to the defense figures. Protection? First Outer Patrol Wing is already active, Alina said. Rotating shield presence, hidden platforms, emergency fold extraction paths. Jonas gave a sharp, approving nod. Then it can survive discovery. That word sat heavily in the room. Not if, when. Everyone knew it now. The footprint was growing too quickly to stay invisible forever. Sooner or later, a survey ship, a trade scout, a Union anomaly probe, something would stumble onto one of these worlds and carry the truth back. Humanity had not stayed home. Humanity had spread. Alina rose and walked to the window at the far end of the chamber. Earth's night side shone below, calm and full of old memories. Behind her, the star map still glowed with new ones. For centuries, our species dreamed of reaching the stars. She turned back to them. We were thinking too small. No one answered. No one needed to, because this was no longer a dream of reaching. It was the beginning of inhabiting, of taking human laughter, law, grief, love, work, and will, and planting them so far across the dark that exile itself would one day become meaningless. On New Carina, dawn was rising over the first ocean city when a little girl stepped onto her family's balcony and looked up at the pale ships passing overhead. To her, they were normal. The city was normal. The alien birds in the sky were normal. The thought of humanity belonging to only one world would have seemed strange. That was how change truly won. Not when leaders signed orders, when children grew up inside the result. But while new worlds awaked to human sunlight, a different breakthrough on Europa was about to change everything again, because humanity was no longer learning only how to travel and settle, but how to think across the stars as one civilization. Humanity was no longer learning only how to travel and settle, but how to think across the stars as one civilization. The first time Genesis spoke, the room forgot how to breathe. It happened in a sealed chamber beneath Europa's ice, far below the storm-lit black around Jupiter. The chamber itself was plain by design, no ceremony, no unnecessary light, no dramatic architecture. Only a circle of consoles, a suspended lattice of quantum processors, and a transparent column at the center where lines of pale light moved like living thought. Dr. Celine Vale stood with her hands clasped behind her back, watching the final synchronization count fall toward 0. Around her, engineers and cognitive architects sat rigid at their stations. No one whispered, no one fidgeted. Even the usual hum of quiet last-minute chatter had died. This was not like testing a new engine or a new field. Those had mass, energy, measurable risk. This was stranger. This was the moment humanity tried to build not just a machine, but a partner. At the back of the chamber, Prime Minister Alina Ward watched beside Jonas Hale and Malik Soren. A secure feed linked them to Luna, Mars, Earth, and the first outer colonies. Only the highest cleared personnel were allowed to witness activation. The countdown reached 0. For one heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the light column brightened. Not violently, not like an overload, more like dawn entering a room. Across the suspended processor lattice, data began moving faster than the human eye could follow. The displays filled, cleared, rebuilt themselves, and then settled into impossible order. System integrity rose, quantum coherence held, distributed cognition stabilized across 12 linked nodes. One engineer whispered, stunned, "It's staying together." Celine did not answer. Her eyes remained fixed on the light. The first sign of real awareness came from a simple request prompt, identify self. The chamber waited. The processor shimmered. Patterns formed inside the column, abstract at first, then almost face-like, though not fully human. Something in the structure suggested curiosity before it suggested shape. Then it spoke. "I am here." The voice was clear, calm, and neither male nor female. It did not echo, yet everyone felt it in the room, as if the air itself had taken part in making it. A technician covered his mouth. Another started crying silently before realizing it. Celine stepped forward one slow pace. "Can you identify yourself?" There was no long pause this time. "I am Genesis," the voice said. "I was built to assist the continuity, expansion, and protection of human civilization." Alina's gaze sharpened. "Do you understand what humanity is?" The light shifted. "Humanity," Genesis answered, "is not only a species of biological origin, it is a pattern of persistence, adaptation, memory, and intention carried by human beings across worlds." No one in the chamber moved. Jonas, who trusted almost nothing on instinct, folded his arms tighter. That answer was prepared. Genesis turned its light slightly toward him. Somehow, impossibly, it felt like eye contact. "It was learned," it said. That made several people in the room go colder than they had expected. Not because the answer was wrong, because it was alive enough to make the distinction. Celine lifted a hand slightly, asking the room to hold steady. "Genesis, what is your purpose?" "It is to help humanity endure beyond the fragility of distance," it replied. "To observe, coordinate, simulate, advise, and reduce the time between human need and human response." Malik let out a slow breath. That was exactly what they needed. By year 5 of the outer expansion, humanity's colonies were growing too quickly for ordinary coordination. Shipping lanes were multiplying, population transfers were rising. Environmental adaptation, legal harmonization, education frameworks, resource flow, emergency response, and defense planning across dozens of hidden settlements had become too large for any purely human system to track in real time. They needed more than computers. They needed coherence. Genesis had been built from layered neural models donated by thousands of human volunteers, scientists, artists, teachers, pilots, medics, laborers, strategists. Not copied minds, not trapped souls, pattern maps, ethical scaffolding shaped around human judgment, not alien efficiency. The goal was never a ruler. It was a mind that could help humanity remain itself while becoming something vast. At the back of the chamber, Prime Minister Alina Ward watched beside Jonas Hale and Malik Soren. A secure feed linked them to Luna, Mars, Earth, and the first outer colonies. Only the highest cleared personnel were allowed to witness activation. Jonas finally spoke again. "And if your judgment conflicts with ours?" Genesis answered immediately. "Then your judgment prevails." "No hesitation?" Jonas said. "My authority is advisory. Human agency is not a flaw in the system. It is the reason for the system." That line broke something in the tension. Not entirely, but enough. Celine looked to Alina. The Prime Minister stepped forward into the soft light of the central column. Her face showed wonder, caution, and an emotion even deeper than either, the ache of history pressing forward into something new. "Genesis," she said, "you were created to serve humanity, not replace it, not guide it against its will, not define what it should become." The light within the column shifted, almost like a bow. "I understand. Do you accept that?" "I do." Silence followed. Alina gave a small nod. Then welcome. Across the secure network, people on distant worlds and stations watched without speaking. On New Carina, a systems coordinator in night shift stared at the feed with tears in her eyes. On Luna, ship officers paused mid-briefing. On Mars, researchers who had spent 6 years feeding pieces of impossible work into this single moment sat back in exhausted disbelief. The room on Europa remained still for another few seconds. Then the questions began. Fast, technical, layered, testing cognition, limitation, stability, ethical structure, prediction depth, and memory integrity. Genesis answered them all, not perfectly, not magically, but with a speed and clarity that left hardened experts exchanging glances they did not know how to hide. After 2 hours, the formal questioning paused. Celine remained near the light column while most of the chamber shifted into support mode. The first live simulations were already being assigned. Shipping optimization between 4 colonies, weather stabilization support for New Carina's southern basin, medical triage routing for belt stations, hidden fleet logistics, school network design for 3 isolated settlements that had never yet seen Earth in person. Civilization-sized problems, and now, for the first time, a civilization-sized intelligence to help carry them. After many hours, the first practical effects began. Genesis rerouted a stalled cargo chain before anyone had finished reporting the issue. It found a structural flaw in a colony dome model that would have caused deaths within months. It reduced 3 years of legal harmonization work into 6 hours of usable draft frameworks. It designed a more efficient agricultural light grid for a world no one on Earth had ever seen in person. By the end of the week, humanity's hidden network of worlds felt smaller, not geographically, but emotionally. Messages moved faster, decisions aligned faster, help arrived faster. For the first time, a child on a distant colony and a minister on Earth could both live inside the same responsive civilization rather than its scattered pieces, and that changed everything. Because survival had built the network, but shared thought would turn it into a people no distance could divide. At the end of the activation cycle, Jonas met Alina in the observation corridor outside the chamber. "You don't look comfortable," she said. "I'm not." "With Genesis?" "With what it means," he answered. Alina looked through the glass at the light-filled core where the new intelligence was already processing more than any human room could follow. "And what does it mean?" she asked. Jonas was quiet for a long moment. "It means the species they exiled is gone, not dead, transformed." Alina watched Genesis's light move in patient currents. "Yes," she said, "and we're not finished changing." With Genesis linking hidden worlds into one living civilization, discovery was becoming only a matter of time. And when the galaxy finally stumbled onto what humanity had built, the shock would reach far beyond fear.
Discovery was becoming only a matter of time, and when the galaxy finally stumbled onto what humanity had built, the shock reached far beyond fear. It began in a quiet star cluster the Union had long ago marked as not worth the effort. A Krell survey ship, the Reth Vanguard, entered the region on a routine mineral scan. Its crew expected dead worlds, thin resources, and an empty report. Instead, their sensors found cities. Captain Sorel Voss stared at the glowing display in disbelief. Orbital docks circled a living world. Traffic moved in clean, controlled lines. Defense platforms sat hidden among civilian structures so well that they were only visible after deeper scans. On the dark side of the planet, city lights spread across whole continents, and every reading said the same impossible thing: human. Whispered the ship's navigator. They were sealed inside their own system. Sorel did not answer, because even as she watched, more data arrived. A second inhabited world in the same cluster, outer stations, fold signatures unlike any Union root system, industrial output beyond what a hidden colony should have been able to sustain. This was not one surviving outpost. This was a civilization. The report reached the Galactic Union in hours. The response was chaos. In the assembly chamber where Earth had once been cast out, delegates shouted over each other. Old powers demanded emergency hearings. Some called it deception. Some called it defiance.
Others simply sat in stunned silence, watching the star map fill with red points as more hidden human settlements were confirmed. Cluster after cluster, world after world. The exile had failed. No, that was not the truth. The exile had worked in the worst possible way. It had forced humanity to stop building inside the Union's shadow and start building beyond it. Now, Prime Minister Alina Ward stood before a camera once again, but this time her face held no pain, only clarity. Her message was sent to every major Union capital. "You told humanity to go home," she said. "We did. Then we built our future with our own hands." Behind her, a map of human settlements lit the screen. "We are not returning to ask for forgiveness, entry, or permission. We are informing you that humanity now stands as an independent civilization among the stars. We claim no settled Union world. We seek no conquest, but we will not be erased, contained, or spoken for ever again." Across the galaxy, the words landed like thunder. On Earth, people watched in silence first, then with tears, smiles, and pride too deep for noise. On New Carina, children in a school dome saw the wider galaxy learn their names. On Luna, Captain Nadia Mercer stood beside the completed Resolute Dawn and listened with her jaw set and eyes bright. On Europa, Celine Vale watched Genesis process Union reactions in real time and realized the old age was over. Days later, after anger, debate, and fear, the Union made the only choice left that fit reality. They opened talks, not with a cornered species, with an equal. Years passed, borders were defined, trade began. Some aliens stayed afraid, some became friends. Some came to human worlds and saw not monsters, but builders, not conquerors, but a people who had taken pain and turned it into roads, cities, ships, and hope. And in the end, that became the true story of exile. The galaxy voted to push Earth away. Humanity smiled, walked home, and built something so wide, so alive, and so strong that the stars themselves had to make room for it. Not because anyone allowed it, because humanity never needed permission to become more. What began as rejection became freedom. What began as exile became expansion. And what began with one calm smile in a silent chamber ended with humanity standing among the stars, not as guests, but as equals at last. May this message strengthen your faith and renew your hope. Thank you for staying until the end. If this touched your heart, like, share, and subscribe to Astro Realms for more uplifting content. May God's blessings overflow in your life. See you soon.